The story of Hurricane Iniki begins quietly, far from the lush shores of Kauai. On Sunday, September 5th of 1992, a small cluster of thunderstorms churned over the eastern Pacific Ocean. At first, it was little more than a tropical disturbance, common in those waters, rarely a serious threat to the Hawaiian Islands. Its roots may have stretched thousands of miles across the globe, seeded by an atmospheric wave that had traveled from the African coast weeks before. Slowly, the disturbance organized, and by September 5th, it was classified as a tropical depression. For Hawaiians, this posed no alarm. Hurricanes were something the islands had learned to dismiss. In living memory, most systems had bent away to the north or slipped harmlessly south, deflected by a protective ridge of high pressure known as the subtropical ridge. This invisible shield had spared the islands again and again, leaving residents to believe that direct strikes were unlikely, almost mythical. As the first week of September unfolded, life on Kauai was completely normal. Families were preparing for the start of the high school football season. Skies were brilliantly clear, and the island's gardens and forests flourished under the late summer sun. There was no sense of urgency, no reason to suspect the peace would soon end. By Tuesday, September 8th, the depression had intensified into a tropical storm, earning its name Iniki, a Hawaiian word meaning strong and piercing wind. A day later, it strengthened further, upgraded to a hurricane. Forecasts continued to show the system tracking westward, expected to pass south of the Hawaiian chain without incident. The greatest concern voiced at the time was the potential for a high surf along south-facing shores. But while people went about their daily lives, the atmosphere above them was changing. The subtropical ridge, the very shield that had protected Hawaii for decades, began to weaken. At the same time, a deep trough of low pressure started digging southward across the central Pacific, acting like a giant vacuum in the atmosphere. This subtle but critical shift would set Iniki on a path unlike any storm before it. By Thursday, September 10th, forecasters at the Central Pacific Hurricane Center were grappling with uncertainty. Some computer models still suggested the hurricane would remain on its westward course. Others, however, showed an alarming alternative, a sudden and sharp turn to the north. For now, those projections were treated as outliers, but in just a matter of hours, they would prove to be tragically correct. On the morning of Friday, September 11th of 1992, residents of Kauai woke to radio bulletins that left many stunned. Overnight, Hurricane Iniki had executed the feared northward turn. What had once seemed like a distant storm was now racing directly toward the island. By sunrise, Iniki had reached Category 4 strength, with sustained winds near 140 miles per hour. At 8 o'clock that morning, the Central Pacific Hurricane Center issued a hurricane warning for Kauai. This was the first time in modern Hawaiian history that such an urgent alert had been delivered for the island. Schools closed immediately, businesses shuttered their doors, and families scrambled to buy last-minute supplies. Stores quickly ran out of bottled water, canned goods, and flashlights. For many, it was their first true hurricane preparation experience. By midday, the outer bands of Iniki began sweeping across Kauai. Heavy rain fell in bursts, bending palm trees and obscuring the mountains in sheets of gray. Around 1 in the afternoon, the sky darkened as though it were twilight, even though the sun was high above the Pacific. The storm's eye was rapidly approaching. At 3:30 in the afternoon, the full force of Iniki made landfall on Kauai's south shore near the town of Waimea. Wind gusts were recorded at more than 160 miles per hour, strong enough to rip roofs from homes and snap utility poles like matchsticks. Debris flew through the air as if it were shrapnel. Entire groves of trees were flattened in minutes. The storm surge arrived shortly after, inundating coastal neighborhoods. Walls of seawater up to 6 feet high pushed inland, destroying boats, flooding houses, and sweeping vehicles from roads. Some residents who had ignored evacuation orders found themselves trapped, clinging to trees, or climbing onto rooftops as the waters rose. For more than 2 hours, Kauai was battered relentlessly. As the eye passed over, a brief and eerie calm settled across parts of the island. The winds died, and for a moment, people stepped outside to survey the devastation. But this peace lasted only half an hour before the back half of the storm slammed the island with equal, if not greater, ferocity. By evening, Iniki had passed northward, leaving behind silence, broken only by the sound of dripping rain and distant sirens. Kauai, once lush and vibrant, was now a scene of staggering destruction. What had been a paradise that morning was unrecognizable by nightfall. When daylight returned on Saturday, September 12th of 1992, the full scope of Iniki's devastation became clear. Nearly every structure on Kauai had suffered some form of damage, with entire neighborhoods reduced to piles of splintered wood and twisted metal. Officials later estimated that more than 14,000 homes were damaged, and over 1,400 were completely destroyed. Roofs were peeled away with ease, leaving families exposed to the elements. Electric power was cut off island-wide, plunging residents into darkness for weeks. Fallen transmission lines crisscrossed roads while utility poles leaned or snapped across highways, blocking travel. Communication was crippled as well. Telephone service collapsed, and emergency radios became the only reliable link between communities. The lack of information left many people uncertain about when aid might arrive. Agriculture, the lifeblood of Kauai, was devastated. The island's famous sugarcane fields were flattened, and fruit orchards were stripped bare in a matter of hours. Entire crops were lost, dealing a severe blow to farmers and the local economy. Iniki also uprooted countless trees, leaving barren hillsides where lush green once thrived. Tourism, another critical industry, ground to a halt. Hotels along the southern coast were left in ruins, with shattered windows, flooded lobbies, and debris littering once pristine beaches. Visitors stranded on the island faced limited food, water, and shelter, relying heavily on the generosity of residents. The image of paradise had been replaced by scenes of ruin. The natural environment also bore deep scars. Coral reefs were smashed by the storm surge, and countless birds lost their nesting grounds. Some endangered species, already struggling for survival, faced even greater challenges after the hurricane reshaped their habitats. Altogether, damages from Hurricane Iniki were calculated at around $3 billion, making it the costliest hurricane in Hawaiian history. Yet beyond the numbers, what stood out most was the sheer scale of human loss, homes, livelihoods, and the sense of safety that had once defined life on Kauai. In the immediate aftermath of Hurricane Iniki, the United States military played a crucial role in relief operations. Within hours, cargo planes began arriving from Oahu, bringing food, water, medical supplies, and emergency crews. The National Guard was deployed to restore order, clear roads, and distribute essentials to families who had lost nearly everything. For many residents, the sight of helicopters dropping aid packages was the first sign of hope since the storm passed. FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, established command centers on Kauai to coordinate disaster response. Thousands of residents registered for assistance, and emergency shelters were set up in schools, churches, and community centers. The American Red Cross mobilized volunteers nationwide, providing meals, blankets, and temporary housing to those displaced. One of the unique challenges after Iniki was restoring communication. With telephone lines destroyed and electricity unavailable, the only reliable way to reach the outside world was through amateur radio operators. These volunteer ham radio users relayed critical information between Kauai and other islands, keeping both officials and families connected during the crisis. The recovery also depended heavily on local communities pulling together. Neighbors shared food and water, while residents organized cleanup crews to clear debris from homes and roads. Schools that had lost roofs and classrooms still tried to resume lessons, often holding classes outdoors under makeshift tents. Celebrities and public figures also drew attention to the disaster. Musicians from Hawaii and across the mainland organized benefit concerts, raising funds for rebuilding efforts. The storm even disrupted Hollywood. Production for the movie Jurassic Park, which was being filmed on Kauai, was forced to shut down temporarily due to the extensive damage. Rebuilding took years. Many families lived in temporary housing long after the storm passed, and full restoration of electricity and infrastructure stretched into months. Insurance companies were overwhelmed with claims, and for some residents, recovery was a slow and frustrating process. Despite the hardships, the resilience of Kauai's people became a defining story of Hurricane Iniki. The island had been brought to its knees, but the strength of its communities and the aid from across the nation kept recovery moving forward. Hurricane Iniki left behind more than broken homes and battered landscapes. It reshaped how Hawaii prepares for natural disasters. The storm exposed weaknesses in communication systems, power grids, and evacuation planning. In the years that followed, the state invested heavily in stronger emergency sirens, improved weather monitoring, and updated building codes designed to withstand hurricane-force winds. For residents of Kauai, the memory of Iniki became a generational touchstone. Families passed down stories of survival and resilience, ensuring that the lessons of 1992 would not be forgotten. Annual hurricane preparedness drills became more common across the islands, with officials urging households to keep at least 2 weeks of supplies on hand in case of another major storm. The economic impact lingered for years. Tourism, a cornerstone of Hawaii's economy, suffered a major setback as resorts and attractions on Kauai struggled to reopen. Some businesses never returned, while others rebuilt stronger and more storm-resistant. Farmers, too, had to start over, replanting crops and repairing damaged irrigation systems. Iniki also carried a sobering reminder of climate vulnerability. While hurricanes in Hawaii are rare, scientists have noted that warming ocean waters could increase the strength of storms reaching the islands. For many, Iniki is still a warning of what future hurricanes might look like in a changing climate. 3 decades later, Hurricane Iniki remains the strongest hurricane ever recorded in Hawaii's history. It tested the island of Kauai in ways no one could have imagined, but it also showed the strength and determination of its people. Today, the legacy of Iniki is not only the destruction it caused, but also the improvements it inspired in preparedness and resilience. Hawaii continues to carry the scars of that September day, but it also carries the knowledge and readiness to face whatever storms may come next. Did you know that some tornadoes can have winds faster than a race car? The tornado that hit Greenfield, Iowa on the afternoon of May 21st, 2024, had wind speeds that reached over 300 miles per hour according to radar. That's faster than most things on the road or in the air, but the tornado didn't just break records, it broke hearts, homes, and a whole community. The day started like any other spring day in Iowa, but the weather experts already knew trouble was coming. That morning, the Storm Prediction Center gave the area a moderate risk for severe weather, especially tornadoes. It wasn't just Greenfield that was in danger. The entire region, including parts of Missouri, Wisconsin, Illinois, and Minnesota, was under watch. A mix of warm, moist air from the south met with cooler, dry air, and by afternoon, storms had already started forming. The setup was perfect for something dangerous to form, and unfortunately, it did. At around 2:57 p.m., the tornado touched down in rural Page County, Iowa. At first, it didn't look like much, just some branches ripped from trees and minor damage to a farm building. But this was only the beginning. As it moved northeast, it passed through parts of Taylor and Adams counties, growing stronger with each mile. It crossed over fields, tore through power poles, and slammed into farm buildings. Storm chasers captured the tornado on video, showing a huge funnel cloud spinning with a wide debris field below. That was the first real clue that this was going to be a serious storm. The tornado became stronger quickly. As it passed through the countryside near Nottoway and crossed US Route 34 north of Brooks, it was already starting to look like the monster it would become. Cars on the highway were in danger, and sadly, this is where one person lost their life. A 41-year-old woman named Monica Irma Zamaron was caught in the tornado's path and thrown from her car. She didn't survive. Just after that, the tornado hit with EF2 and then EF3 strength. Those are ratings based on how much damage a tornado causes. In this case, entire homes were being torn apart. One house lost its walls and slid off its foundation, and all the buildings nearby were completely destroyed. The tornado's width expanded too, stretching over 1,300 yards across, more than 3/4 of a mile. It even showed what's called suction vortices, which are smaller, fast-spinning funnels inside the main tornado. These are what caused the most intense destruction in some areas. This was the tornado's buildup. Greenfield was next in its path, and no one could have imagined just how hard it was going to hit. By the time the tornado reached Greenfield, the damage was already widespread, but what awaited the small town was nothing short of catastrophic. As it approached from the southwest, there was no mistaking the power of this storm. In the distance, residents could see the funnel cloud descending from the sky, a dark, swirling mass of destruction on the horizon. At approximately 3:35 p.m., the tornado touched down just west of Greenfield. With winds now exceeding 200 miles per hour, it was an EF4 tornado, a classification rarely seen in populated areas. The first major hit was on the western outskirts of town, where the twister tore through residential neighborhoods. Homes, businesses, and schools in its path were completely flattened, Roofs were ripped off, windows shattered, and debris was sent flying through the air like projectiles. In some places, foundations were all that remained of what had once been family homes. The impact of the tornado was immediate and overwhelming. The sounds of the storm were deafening. Winds howling, objects slamming against each other, and the terrifying roar of the funnel cloud itself. It was as if the very ground beneath Greenfield had been picked up and tossed aside. Residents who had not yet taken shelter were caught off guard. Many rushed to their basements or any nearby safe location, hoping to ride out the storm. Those who had not made it to safety were forced to take cover wherever they could, some hiding under staircases or in bathrooms, bracing for the worst. Greenfield's school system took a direct hit. Greenfield High School, a local landmark, suffered severe damage. The roof was torn off, windows were shattered, and classrooms were left in ruins. Despite the destruction, the school's basement remained one of the safest places in town. Emergency responders and school staff worked quickly to move students to shelter, ensuring that no lives were lost in the building. It was a relief for families who were worried about the safety of their children, but the devastation outside was still staggering. As the tornado roared on, it didn't let up. The storm continued its path of destruction, moving through residential areas and beyond. The tornado ripped apart buildings on both sides of Greenfield's main street, leaving a path of debris stretching for miles. Businesses, homes, and farms that had been in the area for generations were now nothing more than piles of rubble. The sheer scale of the damage was hard to comprehend. Entire neighborhoods had been wiped out in a matter of minutes. The emotional toll on the residents of Greenfield was impossible to ignore. As the skies began to clear and the storm passed, the true extent of the damage became clear. People wandered through what was left of their homes, unable to believe the destruction they were seeing. Some searched for loved ones, while others struggled to salvage what little they could from the wreckage. For many, it was a day that would change their lives forever. After the tornado passed, Greenfield was left in a state of shock. The town, once a peaceful and quiet place, now resembled a war zone. Emergency services quickly moved in, working around the clock to assist those in need. Ambulances, fire trucks, and police cars filled the streets, with first responders tirelessly searching for survivors and assessing the damage. Their efforts were critical in the aftermath, as many people were trapped in the debris waiting for rescue. The storm had taken its toll on the community in ways that went beyond the physical destruction. In the days that followed, volunteers from nearby towns began to pour into Greenfield. Eager to help with the cleanup efforts, local churches, schools, and businesses turned into temporary shelters for displaced families, offering food, water, and comfort in a time of crisis. The spirit of unity was evident as people came together to rebuild their shattered town. The Greenfield community was determined not to let the tornado define them, though the road to recovery would be long and difficult. One of the first tasks was to restore power. The tornado had knocked out power lines, leaving much of the town in darkness. Crews worked tirelessly, often in dangerous conditions, to get electricity back up and running. Meanwhile, communication lines were also down, making it harder for loved ones to check in on one another. People had to rely on word of mouth and face-to-face communication to find out what had happened to those who lived outside the hardest hit areas. By May 4th, 2 days after the tornado hit, the National Weather Service conducted a thorough assessment of the damage. Their findings confirmed that Greenfield had experienced an EF4 tornado, with winds estimated to have reached over 200 miles per hour. This level of destruction was rare, and the damage was not just limited to homes and businesses. Roads were torn apart, trees were uprooted, and vehicles were tossed aside like toys. The town was left without much of its infrastructure, and it would take months, if not years, for Greenfield to fully recover. In the immediate aftermath, many residents were left wondering what would come next. They had lost so much in such a short period of time, and the emotional scars would linger long after the physical rebuilding was complete. Some families were displaced entirely, their homes beyond repair. For others, the task of starting over in the face of such overwhelming loss seemed almost impossible. Still, the sense of community was a source of strength. Local and national organizations raised millions of dollars in donations to support those affected by the disaster. Greenfield wasn't alone in its recovery efforts, and with help from across the country, the town began to slowly pick up the pieces. Even as the cleanup continued, many residents began to reflect on the experience. The tornado had changed their perspective on life. It had shown them the fragility of existence and the importance of community. Despite the pain and loss, there was also a deep sense of gratitude for the lives that were saved, for the support that poured in from near and far, and for the resilience of the people of Greenfield. As the months passed, the town would begin to rebuild, but it would never forget the events of May 2nd, one of the darkest days in its history. As the months went by, the people of Greenfield focused on rebuilding their lives and their town. The emotional toll of the tornado was still fresh in many minds, but the resilience of the community shone through. While the process of recovery was far from easy, there was a growing sense of hope as Greenfield began to heal. In the wake of the disaster, the town received significant support from local government agencies, volunteers, and organizations. These efforts were crucial in getting Greenfield back on its feet. Many businesses that had been destroyed in the tornado were able to reopen thanks to relief funds and grants. Homeowners, with the help of insurance companies and financial assistance, worked to rebuild their houses. The support was overwhelming, and it helped to provide some sense of normalcy in a place that had been turned upside down. Throughout the summer of 2024, the cleanup continued and the debris from the storm was cleared. Crews worked tirelessly to restore the town's infrastructure, from repairing roads to rebuilding bridges. The power grid was gradually restored, and by midsummer, Greenfield's residents were able to return to their homes, many of which had been extensively repaired or rebuilt. Schools were also reopened, and children returned to their classrooms, though it took time for the community to fully regain its footing. However, there were some lasting effects. The mental health impact of the tornado was significant. Many residents still struggled with the trauma, as the terrifying event had left deep emotional scars. The town's leaders, local counselors, and support groups worked together to offer resources for those in need. Therapy sessions and group counseling were made available to anyone who sought help, and the importance of mental health awareness became a central part of the recovery process. For some, it would take years to fully come to terms with what they had experienced, but Greenfield was dedicated to helping its residents heal, emotionally as well as physically. And by the end of the year, Greenfield had made incredible progress, but the town would never be the same. The tornado had changed the landscape, both literally and figuratively. The memories of that fateful day would stay with the residents forever, but so would the lessons learned. People had come together, helped one another, and demonstrated the power of community in the face of unimaginable loss. The Greenfield tornado of May 2nd, 2024 was a devastating event, but it was also one that showcased the strength and resilience of a small town. Though the damage was extensive, the town was able to recover because of the unwavering support from its residents and the broader community. As time passed, Greenfield continued to rebuild, and it remained a symbol of hope for those who witnessed its recovery. The story of the Greenfield tornado is not just one of destruction, but one of survival, unity, and the determination to rebuild, no matter the odds. The year is 2011. Across the vast landscapes of Texas, a silent threat is taking shape. It's not a single spark that will ignite disaster, but a combination of extreme environmental factors, a severe drought, relentless heat, and powerful winds that together will create a firestorm unlike anything the state has ever seen. By the end of that year, nearly 31,500 individual fires would sweep across Texas, consuming more than 4 million acres of land and destroying almost 3,000 homes. 10 lives would be lost, including 4 brave firefighters who battled the flames. The epicenter of this catastrophe emerged in early September in Bastrop County, just east of Austin. Over Labor Day weekend, families were enjoying the final days of summer, unaware of the danger brewing in the parched woods surrounding them. On Sunday, September 4th, 3 separate fires ignited in the area. The cause was deceptively simple. The drought-brittle trees, already weakened by months without rain, were toppled by strong winds and crashed into power lines, sparking flames that quickly gained momentum. One resident, Tiffany Cox, would later recall noticing heavy traffic and a strange haze in the sky. By the time she had put away her groceries, a massive column of smoke loomed over her neighborhood, a warning of the inferno that was about to engulf her home. The 3 small fires merged rapidly, driven by wind gusts fueled by Tropical Storm Lee churning in the Gulf of Mexico. Within just 48 hours, the flames combined into what became known as the Bastrop County Complex Fire. This was not a slow-moving blaze. The firestorm advanced with terrifying speed, consuming everything in its path. Flames leapt over roads, fire breaks, and even rivers, while embers were carried miles ahead, igniting new pockets of fire. Emergency personnel went door to door, urging residents to evacuate, but for many, escape came too late. Firefighters reported flame heights reaching 100 feet, and the intense heat ruptured asphalt and concrete foundations. Entire neighborhoods were turned to ash almost instantly, and the scale of destruction overwhelmed local and state resources. As the Bastrop fire raged, more than 180 additional fires erupted across Texas that same week. Fire crews from over 40 states poured in to assist, while National Guard aircraft dropped slurry in an attempt to slow the advance. Yet the conditions were extreme. Blistering heat, bone-dry forests, and relentless winds combined to make containment almost impossible. By the end of September, the Bastrop County Complex Fire had already burned 25,000 acres and destroyed over 500 homes. This single fire complex would eventually become the most destructive wildfire in Texas history, responsible for more than half of all homes lost in the entire 2011 season. For the people of Bastrop County, the smoke, the roaring flames, and the loss of their homes would mark the beginning of a disaster that would define the year. The devastation of the 2011 Texas wildfires wasn't caused by a single spark, but by a rare combination of environmental and climatic forces that left the state primed for disaster. The first of these forces was the historic drought that had gripped Texas for months. From October 2010 through September 2011, the state endured the driest 12-month period ever recorded. Rivers, lakes, and reservoirs dropped to record lows, and grasses, shrubs, and forests dried out to the point where they could ignite with the slightest friction. This wasn't just a dry summer, it was a fundamental reshaping of the land's ability to resist fire. Bastrop County, where the largest fires would erupt, had been in a state of exceptional drought, the highest severity level since May of that year. Layered on top of the drought was the relentless heat. The summer of 2011 was scorching, with July alone setting the record as the hottest month in Texas history. Temperatures routinely soared well above 100 degrees Fahrenheit, evaporating any residual moisture from the soil and leaving vegetation brittle and primed to burn. The heat acted like a kiln, curing the grasslands and forests into kindling that could carry flames across miles in minutes. But the drought and heat alone were not enough to produce fires of the scale that would devastate Texas. A third, less visible factor played a decisive role: a powerful La Niña weather pattern in the Pacific Ocean. La Niña events occur when sea surface temperatures in the eastern Pacific drop below average, altering global weather systems. For Texas, this meant the jet stream was pushed northward, diverting rain-producing storms away from the state and ensuring the dry, hot conditions persisted. The La Niña that began in 2010 was particularly strong and unrelenting, effectively shutting off rainfall for much of the state and setting the stage for a wildfire season of historic proportions. When these forces combined, the results were catastrophic. Trees, grasses, and homes became fuel in a landscape already primed to burn. Winds from Tropical Storm Lee in early September provided the final push, fanning sparks into unstoppable infernos. In Bastrop County, what began as 3 small fires merged within 48 hours into the Bastrop County Complex Fire, fueled by months of drought, extreme heat, and wind. This perfect storm of natural and climatic conditions explains why the fires were not just destructive, they were historic, leaving scars on the land and the people that remain to this day. When the fires finally began to subside, the full scale of destruction across Texas was staggering. Nearly 4 million acres of land had been consumed by flames, leaving behind charred forests, burned neighborhoods, and communities grappling with loss. The economic toll was immense. Insured property damage alone exceeded $500 million, while the state's timber industry faced losses of more than $1.6 billion. Farmers and ranchers, already struggling under the drought, saw crops and livestock wiped out, pushing the total economic impact across East Texas to an estimated $3.4 billion. Bastrop County bore the brunt of the devastation. 96% of Bastrop State Park, a treasured area of loblolly pines, was destroyed. The park's unique Lost Pines ecosystem, an isolated stand of pine trees unlike any other in the state, was devastated, along with the habitat of the endangered Houston toad, which relied on the area for survival. Entire neighborhoods were reduced to ash, and roads were blocked by burned debris, making rescue and recovery efforts difficult. Rebuilding would be slow and painstaking. Volunteers and forestry specialists planted millions of pine seedlings in an attempt to restore the scorched landscape. Experts estimate it could take a generation or more for the lost pines to fully recover. erosion became a significant issue as heavy rains washed away soil no longer anchored by vegetation, creating new environmental challenges for the communities and the land. The fires also prompted lasting changes in public policy and community planning. In Austin, new building codes were introduced to make homes in high-risk areas more resistant to wildfires, requiring fire-resistant roofing and reinforced windows. Across the state, recovery organizations were formed to help families rebuild and to strengthen local resilience for future fire seasons. The events of 2011 left an indelible mark on Texas, reshaping how the state prepares for, responds to, and understands the threat of wildfires. The 2011 Texas wildfires were more than a moment of destruction. They were a stark lesson in the power of nature and the fragility of human settlement in extreme conditions. The scale of devastation revealed how quickly a combination of drought, heat, and atmospheric patterns can turn a familiar landscape into a deadly hazard. Across the state, communities began to reevaluate their preparedness, realizing that even regions with a history of resilience are not immune to environmental extremes. Scientists and emergency managers studied the fires closely to understand what had gone wrong and how future disasters could be mitigated. Fire behavior models confirmed that the speed and intensity of the Bastrop County complex fire were largely driven by the unusually low moisture content of trees and grasslands, combined with wind patterns that carried embers miles ahead. These findings influenced how Texas approaches fire risk, emphasizing early detection, strategic vegetation management, and stricter building practices in fire-prone areas. Beyond the technical lessons, the fires left an enduring impact on the people of Texas. Families who lost homes or livelihoods faced years of rebuilding, while communities strengthened networks of support and disaster preparedness. Volunteers, nonprofit organizations, and local governments worked together to replant forests, restore wildlife habitats, and provide assistance to residents, demonstrating resilience in the face of overwhelming loss. The legacy of the 2011 wildfires continues to shape Texas today. It serves as a reminder that climate and weather extremes are capable of producing catastrophic consequences, and that preparation, awareness, and adaptation are essential. While the scars on the land are slowly healing, the memory of those fires remains vivid, a story of destruction, human courage, and the ongoing need to respect the power of the natural world. June 8, 1917 dawned like any other day for the 415 men descending into the Granite Mountain and Speculator mines in Butte, Montana. Known as the richest hill on Earth, this copper-rich area fueled America's industrial engine, especially with World War I raging in Europe. The Anaconda Copper Mining Company, controlling most of the hill, operated around the clock to meet skyrocketing copper demand. Mines like Granite Mountain and Speculator were sprawling networks of tunnels where men labored under extreme conditions, digging deeper into the earth each day. The workforce was a diverse mix of 16 nationalities, including Irish, Finnish, Cornish, Italian, and Serbian immigrants, all drawn by the promise of steady wages. Life underground was grueling. Oppressive heat, dust-choked air, and the constant risk of cave-ins were daily hazards. The miners relied on the steel skip elevators to carry them 2,500 feet below the surface, fully aware that each descent was a gamble with their lives. Tensions simmered beneath the routine, as unions had been weakened, and company pressure for wartime production outweighed concerns for safety. In this environment, the company planned a project to improve fire safety. A new sprinkler system that required lowering a massive oil-soaked, lead-sheathed cable down the Granite Mountain shaft. Ironically, this attempt at safety would unknowingly set the stage for the deadliest hard rock mining disaster in American history. The combination of high-stakes work, minimal oversight, and a complex, poorly understood underground environment created the conditions for catastrophe. It was a powder keg waiting for a single spark to ignite it. The safety project that was meant to protect the miners became the trigger for disaster. The massive 5-inch thick electric cable, designed to power the new sprinkler system, was being carefully lowered down the Granite Mountain shaft late on June 8, 1917. The cable, insulated with oil-soaked paper and wrapped in a lead sheath, slipped and fell nearly half a mile, landing in a tangled wreck at the 2,500-foot level. The fall tore the lead sheathing, exposing the highly flammable insulation inside. Assistant Foreman Ernest Sulau and a shift boss descended to inspect the damage, carrying standard carbide lamps, which produced open flames using acetylene gas. As Sulau leaned toward the mangled cable, his lamp came too close, igniting the oil-soaked insulation. In an instant, the fire shot up the cable like a fuse, engulfing the wooden support timbers of the shaft. The main ventilation system, designed to supply fresh air to the tunnels, now acted as a chimney, pulling smoke, superheated air, and deadly carbon monoxide into the interconnected Granite Mountain and Speculator mine tunnels. Panic spread immediately through the labyrinthine mine network. Workers deep underground had no warning or way to communicate with the surface or other parts of the mine. Every passage became a perilous trap, and the very system meant to keep them alive had turned into a conduit for poison. Within minutes, what began as a small spark had escalated into a life-threatening inferno that would claim 168 men before the ordeal ended. As the fire raged, the miners were trapped in a maze of tunnels that stretched thousands of feet beneath Butte. Thick black smoke and invisible carbon monoxide filled every passage, making each breath a struggle. Many men tried to escape, but the maze-like layout, combined with bulkheads that had never been fitted with emergency hatches, left them with almost no safe routes. Panic set in quickly. Some miners were forced to feel their way along walls, forming human chains in the suffocating darkness. A few groups took desperate measures to survive. Using rocks, timbers, and even scraps of clothing, they constructed makeshift bulkheads, packing them with mud to trap pockets of breathable air. Some miners stayed behind these barriers for hours, waiting in silence, hoping the fire would burn out or that rescuers would reach them. The air grew hotter and thinner as the fire consumed the shaft, and every passing minute increased the risk of suffocation. Communication lines to the surface had been destroyed by the flames, leaving rescuers unaware of who was still alive or where the survivors might be trapped. In these tunnels, courage and knowledge of the mine's layout became the difference between life and death. Every step forward was a gamble against smoke, heat, and disorientation. The tension was unbearable, as men realized that survival depended not on strength, but on quick thinking, ingenuity, and sheer luck. Amid the smoke and searing heat, remarkable acts of bravery emerged. Magnus Duggan, a young tool boy known as a tunnel rat, led a group of 29 men into a dead-end tunnel to create a temporary safe zone. For 36 hours, they huddled together, conserving air and supporting each other as the fire roared above. Duggan guided 25 of his men to safety, but he never emerged himself, reportedly turning back into the smoke to fetch water or help for those left behind. Higher up in the tunnels, shift boss James D. Moore took a similar approach. He and 9 others barricaded themselves with available materials, surviving over 50 hours before being rescued. Moore reached the surface alive, but he later died from injuries sustained underground. Letters written on scraps of paper or directly on tunnel walls gave haunting insight into the miners' final thoughts. One miner scribbled, "All alive but air getting bad, one small piece of candle left, think it is all off." These messages remain a testament to human resilience in the face of overwhelming peril. The fire had turned the Granite Mountain and Speculator mines into a lethal trap, but ingenuity and courage allowed some to survive. Every decision was critical. One wrong step could have meant instant death. Even in the darkest corners of the mine, miners demonstrated extraordinary presence of mind, showing that survival often required calm under unimaginable pressure. This part of the disaster revealed not only the dangers of industrial negligence, but also the enduring strength of human spirit when confronted by life-threatening chaos. On the surface, Butte descended into grief and panic as news of the fire spread. Families rushed to the mine head, eyes straining toward the steel skip that would carry their loved ones up from the depths. Mine whistles sounded continuously, a mournful code signaling disaster that echoed across the city. Rescue efforts were harrowing. One early attempt sent a cage carrying 2 men directly into the flames, killing them instantly. Firefighters battled the blaze for 5 days before gaining any real control, while recovery operations stretched over 8 grueling days. Amid the destruction, a few miraculous survivals emerged from barricaded groups like those led by Magnus Duggan and James D. Moore. Sadly, for every man who escaped, dozens were found lifeless, suffocated by toxic fumes rather than burned. Rescuers discovered the bodies of 168 miners, most in tunnels or behind improvised bulkheads, a stark reminder of how quickly disaster had overtaken the underground labyrinth. The scene above and below ground revealed the human cost of industrial negligence. The city mourned, but the tragedy also sparked a reckoning. Workers and unions demanded accountability and safer conditions. The events left an indelible mark on Butte. shaping labor movements and industrial safety regulations for years to come. The Granite Mountain speculator disaster transformed Butte forever. Public outrage over the deaths of 168 men sparked strikes and the formation of the new Metal Mine Workers Union, demanding safer working conditions and fair treatment. Into this tense environment stepped Frank Little, a fiery organizer with the industrial workers of the world who condemned the prioritization of copper production over human life. His speeches galvanized miners, but also made him a target. On August 1st, 1917, less than 2 months after the disaster, Little was abducted by masked men from his boarding house. He was lynched on a railroad trestle outside of Butte, and a note pinned to his body warned others, "First and last warning." Despite an investigation, the killers were never caught, underscoring the danger faced by labor activists at the time. Meanwhile, the company, claiming wartime necessity, persuaded the federal government to send in troops, imposed martial law, and forced striking miners back to work with few of their demands met. The disaster left a scar on Butte that remains visible today. The Granite Mountain Speculator Mine Memorial honors the men who perished, with plaques listing the names of all 168 victims and flags representing the 16 nationalities of the miners. Recordings of their last letters, written in the darkness of the tunnels, preserve the voices of those who faced death with courage. The tragedy became a somber lesson in industrial safety, workers' rights, and the human cost of progress, ensuring that the men who went to work that June night would never be forgotten. Lituya Bay, located in the southeastern part of Alaska, may appear to be a quiet, peaceful fjord, but it has a history of terrifying and destructive power that most people don't even know about. On July 9, 1958, Lituya Bay became the site of one of the most shocking natural events ever recorded, a mega tsunami that reached a mind-blowing height of 1,720 feet. To put that into perspective, that's taller than the Empire State Building, and no tsunami before or since has ever come close to matching that record. The event began with a massive landslide when an enormous chunk of rock, estimated to be around 30 million cubic yards in size, suddenly plunged into the bay. This was no ordinary landslide. The force of the rocks crashing into the water sent a powerful wave surging up and over the surrounding cliffs, creating a tsunami of catastrophic proportions. The wave tore through the narrow bay at an incredible speed, wiping out everything in its path. It was so powerful that it even stripped trees from the mountainsides, leaving behind a barren landscape where the lush forest had once stood. Despite how incredible and destructive the mega tsunami was, there were only a few eyewitnesses. The most well-known of these witnesses were the people aboard the fishing boat, the Lynn, a vessel that was near the bay when the event occurred. The crew of the Lynn had a front row seat to the incredible wave as it hurtled toward the shore. They managed to survive, but the impact of the mega tsunami left them in awe of nature's raw power. What happened at Lituya Bay in 1958 raises a lot of questions, some of which still don't have clear answers. How exactly did the landslide happen? Was it purely a natural event, or did human activity, such as logging or other environmental factors, contribute to the disaster? And could something like this happen again? The sheer magnitude of the mega tsunami's height and its unexpected nature have led to many speculations and studies over the years, but there's still no concrete understanding of all the factors involved. As scientists continue to study Lituya Bay and its unusual geography, the mystery deepens. The bay is surrounded by steep cliffs that create a narrow, confined space. This trapped environment amplifies the force of natural events, making Lituya Bay a particularly dangerous and unstable place. The landscape, combined with the ongoing tectonic activity in the region, sets the stage for even more potential disasters in the future. Scientists have learned that the same geological forces that caused the mega tsunami of 1958 are still at play today, meaning that Lituya Bay's danger has never fully passed. As we move forward, we'll dive deeper into the science behind what happened in 1958 and explore the ongoing risks that this place faces. Stay tuned as we continue this journey through one of the most fascinating and dangerous natural events in history. In order to understand the full scale of the 1958 mega tsunami in Lituya Bay, we need to explore the geological forces that made it possible. The event didn't happen randomly. The bay is situated in a region with a unique and volatile combination of factors that make it prone to natural disasters, especially ones as destructive as a mega tsunami. Lituya Bay is a narrow fjord, which means it's a body of water surrounded by steep, towering cliffs. The geography here is a major part of what turned a landslide into a record-breaking tsunami. When the rock slide occurred on that fateful day in July, the steep cliffs funneled the massive amount of energy from the falling debris into a concentrated area. This caused the water to rise with such force that the wave reached an unimaginable height. With nowhere for the energy to escape, the force of the water surged upward rather than spreading out over a larger area. It created a tsunami that was much more powerful than what you'd typically see in the open ocean, but what made this particular landslide so massive? For starters, the region around Lituya Bay is incredibly seismically active. The Pacific and North American tectonic plates are constantly shifting, and the pressure between them builds up over time. This ongoing movement of the Earth's crust can trigger massive earthquakes, which in turn can cause landslides. In fact, it's believed that the landslide that triggered the mega tsunami was caused by a relatively small earthquake, measuring about 7.8 on the Richter scale. While not a huge earthquake by some standards, it was enough to send tons of rock crashing into the bay. The landslide itself wasn't just a random event, it was part of the complex natural forces that had been at play in the region for thousands of years. The bay's geological history is filled with tectonic activity, and its physical structure makes it prone to events like this. With steep cliffs and a narrow channel, the water in Lituya Bay is essentially trapped in a confined space. When something like a landslide occurs, the water doesn't have much room to spread out, and it ends up pushing straight up and over the cliffs, creating a catastrophic wave. Adding to the danger of the bay is the region's high level of seismic activity. Earthquakes are a regular occurrence, and while most are small, larger ones can trigger events like the landslide that led to the mega tsunami. The energy released from these earthquakes can shake loose unstable rock formations, triggering massive rock slides into the bay. This, combined with the topography of the bay itself, creates a perfect storm for disaster. Understanding the geological makeup of Lituya Bay helps explain why this mega tsunami was so devastating, but it also raises important questions about future events. The forces at work here haven't gone away. In fact, they're still very much present. The same tectonic activity that triggered the 1958 disaster could cause similar events to occur again. With ongoing seismic activity in the region, Lituya Bay remains a place of concern for scientists studying the area. As we move on, we'll look at the aftermath of the mega tsunami and how scientists have studied its effects. Despite its terrifying nature, this event has provided valuable insights into the power of natural disasters and the ways we can better understand and prepare for them in the future. The aftermath of the 1958 Lituya Bay mega tsunami was both stunning and sobering. The destructive wave, which reached an unimaginable height of 1,720 feet, left an indelible mark on the landscape and offered valuable insights into the forces that shape our planet. In the hours and days following the disaster, scientists and survivors began to grasp the full scope of the devastation. The most immediate and visible effect of the mega tsunami was the widespread destruction of the surrounding forest. As the wave surged up the cliffs and crashed into the mountains, it stripped trees from the slopes, leaving behind a barren and eerie landscape. The water's sheer force was so great that it uprooted massive trees and left them scattered across the bay, some of them still floating in the water long after the event. The power of the wave was undeniable, and its impact on the environment was clear. Not only were trees destroyed, but the wave also caused significant erosion along the cliffs, leaving scars on the land that are still visible today. Remarkably, the mega tsunami's effects were not limited to just the surrounding environment. The local population, who lived in small villages near the bay, were lucky to escape the full force of the disaster. While there were no fatalities directly linked to the mega tsunami itself, the event did cause major disruptions to local communities. The destruction of land and wildlife affected the livelihoods of those who depended on the region's natural resources for survival. Despite the isolated nature of the bay, the force of the event was felt across the surrounding area, and the cleanup and recovery process was long and difficult. One of the most fascinating aspects of the 1958 mega tsunami is the fact that only a few people witnessed the event firsthand. A small number of boats were in the bay at the time, and while most were able to escape the brunt of the wave, one fisherman and his family were in a boat near the shoreline when the wave struck. Their accounts provide an eerie glimpse into the terrifying power of the disaster. As the wave hit, the water in the bay suddenly surged, and they reported seeing the mountain cliffs on either side of them disappear into a wall of water. The fisherman and his family were lucky to survive, but their experience is a vivid reminder of the destructive potential of such an event. The scientific community was quick to respond to the mega tsunami, conducting studies to understand its full scope and the forces that made it possible. Researchers used a combination of eyewitness accounts, geological surveys, and data from nearby seismic stations to piece together the puzzle of what had happened. What they discovered was a rare and unusual event that, while not common, could potentially happen again. The mega tsunami in Lituya Bay was not just a freak accident, but rather a reminder of the raw power that exists in Earth's geological processes. As researchers began to analyze the event, they realized that the Lituya Bay mega tsunami was unique, not only because of its extreme height, but also because of the specific conditions that made it possible. It was the perfect storm of seismic activity, topography, and geology that resulted in the massive wave. In a way, the disaster offered a rare opportunity for scientists to study how large-scale landslides and earthquakes can create such intense tsunamis, something they may not have been able to study under normal circumstances. Looking forward, scientists began to consider what the future might hold for Lituya Bay. While the region's seismic activity had been relatively stable in the years since the 1958 mega tsunami, the underlying geological factors that caused the disaster are still very much in play. The Pacific and North American tectonic plates continue to shift, and the possibility of another landslide or earthquake remains a real threat. But what makes Lituya Bay particularly dangerous is its location and its ability to amplify the effects of such events. The bay's narrow and closed shape funnels the energy of any seismic or landslide event directly into the water, making it a potential breeding ground for another mega tsunami. As we move forward in this story, it's important to consider how the Lituya Bay mega tsunami has shaped our understanding of natural disasters and the science behind them. The lessons learned from this event continue to inform the ways we study and prepare for similar events in the future, highlighting the need for more research into the dynamics of earthquakes, landslides, and tsunamis. The events of July 9th, 1958 may be long behind us, but the lessons they left us with are still very much relevant today. As we reach the conclusion of the Lituya Bay mega tsunami story, it's important to reflect on the lasting impact the event has had on both scientific research in the local area. The 1958 mega tsunami was a game changer for the way we understand the power of nature and the destructive potential of tsunamis. Despite the rare and isolated circumstances of this event, it has sparked ongoing investigations into similar areas around the world, all of which have the potential to experience a similar catastrophe. One of the most significant consequences of the mega tsunami was the heightened awareness it brought to the vulnerability of coastal areas that are situated near active geological zones. As a result, scientists began to study how earthquakes and landslides could trigger tsunamis in other regions with similar topographical and seismic conditions. While Lituya Bay is an extreme case, the principles of how it all unfolded have been applied to better understand tsunamis in general, especially those that might occur along the Pacific Ring of Fire, where tectonic activity is high. Although there were no fatalities directly linked to the mega tsunami, the disaster highlighted the importance of early warning systems and preparedness in regions at risk for tsunamis. The speed at which the waves surged through Lituya Bay left little time for people to respond, making it clear that places with a history of seismic activity need to be on high alert. In the years following the event, efforts to improve tsunami warning systems became a priority for many coastal regions around the world. Scientists also started to look more closely at the effects of large landslides and how they could trigger waves, a crucial element in preventing or mitigating future disasters. The unique and isolated geography of Lituya Bay has also made it a focal point for geological studies. Researchers continue to study the bay and its surroundings to this day, gathering data on its ongoing seismic activity and the state of its landscape. The potential for another major landslide or earthquake is still very much a possibility, and while it may be impossible to predict exactly when or where the next catastrophic event will strike, the lessons learned from the 1958 mega tsunami have paved the way for better preparedness and understanding of similar events elsewhere. What is perhaps most striking about the Lituya Bay mega tsunami is the sheer power of nature. It serves as a reminder that even in the most peaceful and remote locations, the Earth's forces are always at work, shaping and reshaping the landscape in ways we can't always predict. This disaster may have been an extreme and rare event, but it's one that serves as a warning that nothing on Earth is immune from the power of natural forces. In the years since the disaster, the memory of the mega tsunami has lingered, both in the scientific community and in the local memory. It stands as a testament to nature's ability to surprise us and remind us of how little control we truly have over the forces that shape our world. Lituya Bay may seem quiet and peaceful today, but it still holds the potential for the kind of sudden, devastating event that forever alters the landscape. As we finish reflecting on the events of July 9th, 1958, it's clear that Lituya Bay continues to be a unique geological and environmental location that holds important lessons for all of us. It's a reminder that while we may not be able to control or fully predict these catastrophic events, understanding and respecting the natural world around us is essential for surviving and navigating the unpredictability of life on Earth. And who knows, perhaps one day scientists will uncover even more secrets hidden in the depths of Lituya Bay. Until then, we continue to study, learn, and prepare, taking the lessons of the past to better understand the future. Did you know that on the evening of Monday, May 3rd, 1999, the strongest tornado ever recorded on Earth tore through the town of Bridge Creek, Oklahoma? This tornado wasn't just powerful, it was historic. It reached wind speeds of 321 miles per hour, the fastest wind ever measured on the planet. That record was captured by a special mobile Doppler radar just as the tornado hit peak strength. It didn't just break records, it tore apart everything in its path. The day started out like many others in springtime Oklahoma. The Storm Prediction Center had only issued a slight risk for severe weather. That morning, nobody had any idea what was coming. Meteorologists later realized the data had missed a powerful jet stream streak high in the atmosphere. It came in fast from the west and wasn't picked up by models until it was already overhead. That, combined with warm, humid air rising from the Gulf of Mexico, and a diffused dry line moving across the region, created the perfect setup for disaster. But at the time, most people were going about their day as usual. It wasn't until the afternoon that things started to change. Around 3:20 p.m., a small storm started building in southwestern Oklahoma over northeastern Tillman County. It didn't look like much at first, but then it began feeding off the warm surface air and upper-level winds. By 4:15, the National Weather Service had issued a severe thunderstorm warning as the storm moved into Comanche County. Hail the size of golf balls started falling, and the storm was picking up speed. People began to realize this wasn't just another spring storm. By 6:23 p.m., the first signs of real danger appeared. A new tornado touched down just 2 miles south-southwest of Amber, a small town in Grady County. This was tornado number 9, from the supercell storm that had formed hours earlier, but this one was different. Within minutes, it had strengthened to an F4 tornado and was growing in size. It quickly turned into what's called a wedge tornado, wide, powerful, and deadly. It wasn't long before it reached the town of Bridge Creek, where the worst of the destruction would soon unfold. The tornado reached F5 strength as it hit Bridge Creek. Homes were not just damaged, they were gone. Entire buildings were lifted from their foundations and scattered like matchsticks. Cars and trucks were thrown hundreds of yards. In one case, a vehicle was tossed nearly a quarter of a mile. The wind speeds inside the tornado were so high that they weren't even measurable by normal radar systems. Mobile Doppler captured that record-breaking 321 miles per hour wind inside the storm, making it the most violent tornado ever measured. Bridge Creek was left unrecognizable. Streets disappeared under piles of debris, trees were shredded, power lines and communication towers collapsed. And through it all, residents were scrambling to survive. The storm was just getting started, and what came next would push emergency systems, communities, and families to their breaking points. After tearing through Bridge Creek with unimaginable force, the tornado continued its deadly path northeast. It was now heading straight for the heavily populated city of Moore. This wasn't a remote storm anymore. This was a direct threat to thousands of lives. As the tornado left Bridge Creek behind around 6:40 p.m., meteorologists at the National Weather Service in Norman, Oklahoma, knew they had something catastrophic on their hands. Veteran forecasters were stunned by the radar images. The tornado's signature was massive, and the debris ball, an area of radar showing flying wreckage, was clear and alarming. It meant the tornado was not only strong, but was actively destroying structures. A tornado emergency was issued for the first time in history. This wasn't just a typical tornado warning. It was a new level of alert. The words used in the warning were clear and terrifying. A violent tornado was on the ground, causing massive destruction and moving toward populated areas. People in the path were told to take shelter immediately and not to wait. By 7 p.m., the tornado was entering the outskirts of Moore. Unlike Bridge Creek, Moore was densely developed. Homes sat side by side, schools, shopping centers, and busy highways filled the landscape, and it was rush hour. Hundreds of cars were stuck in traffic on Interstate 35 as the storm approached. Many people abandoned their vehicles and ran for cover under overpasses or into nearby ditches, hoping to escape the storm. The tornado remained at F5 strength as it reached Moore. It destroyed entire neighborhoods. Entire blocks were swept clean off their foundations. Schools were flattened. A large portion of a hospital was heavily damaged. A massive natural gas pipeline was struck, and for a short time, officials feared an explosion. A fire station and several emergency buildings were among the many structures lost to the storm. A local news station was broadcasting live throughout the event. Their helicopter pilot, Jim Gardner, flew over the storm as it moved across Moore, giving viewers a terrifying bird's-eye view of the damage in real time. His voice cracked as he described what he was seeing. Homes leveled, neighborhoods gone, fires burning where houses had once stood. His footage would later become some of the most well-known tornado coverage ever recorded. In neighborhoods like Eastlake Estates and Highland Park, families huddled in closets, bathtubs, and storm shelters as the tornado tore through. Many survived only because they had taken shelter in time. Others weren't as lucky. The winds were too strong, and in some cases, even storm shelters were compromised. The raw power of the tornado exceeded what many homes and buildings were built to withstand. By the time the tornado left Moore, it had been on the ground for more than 30 minutes and had carved a damaged path more than 20 miles long, but it was not done yet. It was still moving, still violent, and still had more destruction ahead as it pushed toward the city of Del City and eventually the outskirts of Oklahoma City. As the tornado exited Moore, it pressed onward toward Del City. It was now around 7:15 in the evening. Though still extremely powerful, its winds had begun to slightly weaken, but it remained a massive, deadly storm. It continued to hold its strength as it moved through more urban areas, expanding the trail of devastation. Del City, located just southeast of downtown Oklahoma City, was heavily impacted. Entire rows of homes were damaged or destroyed. Large trees were uprooted and tossed into roadways, power lines snapped, and transformers exploded, plunging parts of the city into darkness. Emergency services struggled to navigate the debris-strewn streets as residents emerged from their shelters, many in shock at the destruction around them. In this part of the storm's path, the tornado damaged several schools, apartment buildings, and small businesses. A large warehouse collapsed entirely, though thankfully it had been evacuated minutes before the tornado arrived. Vehicles were tossed across parking lots and highways. Some were thrown into buildings or wedged between structures. The Twister's rotation began to wobble as it neared Tinker Air Force Base. The base had been placed on full alert after the tornado emergency was issued. Military aircraft had been moved to safety earlier in the day, but the base's outer areas still sustained damage. Several non-hardened structures near the perimeter were torn apart. Housing units on the edge of the base were hit, though base officials later confirmed there were no fatalities within the installation. As the tornado approached the eastern edge of Oklahoma City, its width was still measured at nearly 1 mile across. Rain-wrapped and difficult to see in the fading light, it remained a serious threat. Weather, spotters, and storm chasers followed at a safe distance, documenting the storm's continuing power. The tornado's winds were no longer at their earlier peak, but they remained intense enough to collapse homes, snap steel poles, and fling debris over long distances. It moved at around 30 miles per hour, giving people in its path very little time to react. Many relied on news updates, radio reports, and warnings from neighbors to take shelter. At 7:30 in the evening, the tornado's structure began to weaken noticeably. Its core circulation lost some definition, and its winds slowly decreased. Still, it caused damage as far as Choctaw before finally lifting off the ground after being on a continuous rampage for nearly 1 full hour. In total, it had traveled more than 38 miles across central Oklahoma, causing destruction in rural areas, suburbs, and cities alike. Though the tornado had lifted, the crisis was far from over. Emergency workers faced the grim task of searching for survivors, treating the injured, and assessing the full scope of what had just occurred. The worst tornado in Oklahoma history had finally passed, but the scars it left behind would remain for years to come. After the tornado dissipated near Choctaw, emergency crews quickly mobilized across the storm's wide path of destruction. Firefighters, paramedics, and search and rescue teams from multiple counties moved into action. Many had been tracking the storm's movement in real time and were already preparing before it touched down. As darkness fell, they faced collapsed buildings, downed power lines, flooded streets, and the overwhelming task of reaching those trapped beneath debris. The Oklahoma National Guard was activated that same evening. Units were sent to assist with search efforts, traffic control, and delivering supplies. Roads had to be cleared for ambulances and fire trucks to get through. In some neighborhoods, street signs were gone and landmarks had vanished, making navigation almost impossible. Helicopters from news stations and rescue services hovered overhead, shining spotlights onto flattened homes in hopes of finding survivors. Hospitals across Oklahoma City and surrounding towns began receiving the injured shortly after the tornado passed. Emergency rooms were filled with patients suffering from cuts, broken bones, and blunt force trauma. Triage centers were set up near heavily affected neighborhoods to care for those who could not immediately be transported. Medical personnel from outside the area volunteered their services, some driving through the night to help. Thousands of residents were left without homes. Temporary shelters were opened in churches, schools, and community centers. The American Red Cross and local aid organizations provided food, blankets, and emotional support. Survivors spoke in hushed tones, stunned by the destruction. Many had lost family members, neighbors, or close friends. As word of the disaster spread, volunteers poured in from nearby states. Some brought tools and supplies, while others simply offered their time and labor. Neighbors worked side by side, clearing wreckage and searching for missing persons. In the days that followed, rescue operations turned to recovery efforts. Heavy equipment was brought in to remove larger debris and uncover the remains of buildings. Damage assessment teams began documenting the extent of the destruction. Preliminary estimates placed the cost in the billions. Hundreds of businesses had been destroyed, and entire subdivisions were wiped off the map. Cars were found upside down in fields. Pieces of homes were discovered dozens of miles away from where they once stood. FEMA began coordinating with state officials to provide federal disaster aid. Families were given temporary housing assistance and financial support for rebuilding. Insurance companies faced a record number of claims. Recovery would be a long, difficult process. Even amid the devastation, moments of hope stood out. Pets were reunited with owners. Individuals were pulled alive from collapsed structures days after the tornado hit. Communities came together in powerful ways, cooking meals, raising funds, and helping strangers. The storm had taken a terrible toll, but it also revealed the resilience of the people who endured it. In the months and years following the May 3, 1999 tornado, the scars it left behind remained visible in both the landscape and the people. While many neighborhoods slowly began rebuilding, some areas never fully recovered. Entire subdivisions were reimagined with stronger construction standards. New homes were built with reinforced storm shelters or underground safe rooms, something that became more common throughout central Oklahoma. The disaster prompted changes at both the local and national level. Building codes in tornado-prone areas were reviewed and updated. Schools began investing in safe rooms and improving their emergency preparedness plans, and public awareness campaigns educated people on how to protect themselves during severe weather. The phrase "get underground" became a common part of the vocabulary in Oklahoma homes. Meteorologists and emergency managers used the event as a case study to improve future warnings. The success of the early alert system, which gave residents over 30 minutes of lead time, was a major focus. It demonstrated how vital advanced technology and clear communication could be in saving lives. Local TV stations, weather apps, and NOAA weather radios became even more important tools for staying safe during storm season. For many survivors, the emotional effects lasted far longer than the physical cleanup. Some developed symptoms of post-traumatic stress, especially children who had taken shelter while their homes were torn apart above them. Counseling services were offered across the region, and support groups formed to help people heal. Stories of bravery, loss, and survival were shared at memorials and anniversary events. The tornado also had a lasting impact on how the world viewed extreme weather in the United States. It became one of the most studied tornadoes in history. Scientists analyzed its path, wind speeds, and damage to better understand how such powerful storms form and behave. New radar systems and storm tracking software were developed with lessons learned from that day. Several documentaries and books have been produced to preserve the memories of those affected. Monuments were built in Bridge Creek and more to honor the lives lost. Each year on May 3rd, people gather to reflect and pay tribute. It's not just a day of mourning, it is a day of remembrance, strength, and community. Despite all that was lost, the people of Oklahoma rebuilt with determination. They carried on, not by forgetting the storm, but by learning from it. The May 3rd tornado changed how the country prepares for disasters. It left behind a powerful legacy, one of survival, resilience, and the enduring spirit of those who lived through one of the most violent tornadoes in recorded history. In August of 2017, Hurricane Harvey made history as one of the most devastating storms to ever hit the United States. With its catastrophic rainfall and widespread flooding, it left a lasting impact on Texas and Louisiana, claiming lives, displacing thousands, and causing billions in damage. In this video, we'll take a closer look at how Hurricane Harvey formed, its destruction, and the lasting lessons learned from the storm. Join us as we explore the powerful forces behind this natural disaster and its aftermath. Hurricane Harvey started its journey as a tropical wave on August 12, 2017. This wave emerged from the coast of Africa, moving across the Atlantic Ocean towards the Caribbean. Over the next few days, the system began to show signs of development. By August 17th, the tropical wave had strengthened enough to become a tropical depression, with winds reaching 45 miles per hour. As Harvey made its way into the Caribbean, it briefly weakened due to unfavorable wind conditions. By August 19th, it had degenerated into a tropical wave again. However, it wasn't the end for Harvey. By August 23rd, the system was back on track, with a fresh surface low forming in the Bay of Campeche off the coast of Mexico. This marked the beginning of the storm's rapid intensification. By August 24th, Harvey had regained its strength, transforming into a tropical storm with winds exceeding 60 miles per hour. It quickly gained momentum as it moved towards the Gulf Coast of the United States. The storm continued to intensify as it approached the Texas coastline. By August 25th, Harvey strengthened into a Category 4 hurricane, packing winds of over 130 miles per hour. Harvey's journey from a small tropical wave to a powerful hurricane was a reminder of how unpredictable nature can be. What started as a modest system over the Atlantic Ocean quickly transformed into one of the most devastating storms in U.S. history. At this point, the storm was about to make landfall and change the lives of millions of people. The devastation that followed would be a result of the immense rainfall and flooding that would accompany Harvey's landfall in Texas. On August 25, 2017, Hurricane Harvey made its first landfall near Rockport, Texas, as a powerful Category 4 hurricane. With sustained winds reaching 135 miles per hour, Harvey's winds caused widespread damage to buildings, infrastructure, and trees along the coastline. The storm surge was particularly destructive, flooding coastal areas and leaving many residents trapped. In addition to the surge, the rain that Harvey brought with it began to fall in staggering amounts, setting the stage for the catastrophic flooding that would soon follow. After making landfall, Harvey didn't waste any time moving inland. It began to slow down, almost stalling over eastern Texas. This slow movement allowed Harvey to unload record-breaking rainfall. In some places, the rain began to accumulate rapidly, with more than 40 inches of rain falling in just a few days. As the storm lingered over Texas, areas such as Nederland received a jaw-dropping 60 inches of rain, making it the wettest tropical cyclone in U.S. history at that time. The heavy rainfall caused rivers and bayous to overflow, leading to widespread flooding in greater Houston and surrounding areas. The floodwaters quickly turned streets into rivers, submerging homes, businesses, and entire neighborhoods. The rising waters trapped thousands of people in their homes, forcing many to seek refuge on rooftops or in attics. Emergency rescue operations quickly began, with local authorities, the National Guard, and volunteers working tirelessly to save lives and evacuate those in danger. In total, more than 30,000 people were displaced, and over 17,000 rescues were made across Texas. Harvey's impact wasn't limited to Texas alone. Louisiana also felt the storm's wrath, but the most severe damage was centered in Texas. The storm continued to release heavy rain even as it moved northeastward, leaving behind a trail of destruction that would take months, if not years, to recover from. At this point, it was clear that Hurricane Harvey was going to be one of the most devastating storms to hit the United States in recent memory. As Hurricane Harvey continued to dump rain over Texas, the scale of the devastation became clearer. By August 29, 2017, parts of the state had been submerged under several feet of water. Roads, highways, and bridges were impassable, and many areas were left without power for extended periods. The massive flooding overwhelmed the region's infrastructure, leaving residents stranded and without basic services. Hospitals and emergency services were stretched to their limits as they worked around the clock to care for the injured and evacuate those in need. In the aftermath, communities faced severe challenges. The flooding not only caused widespread property damage, but also impacted essential services like water supply, electricity, and healthcare. In Houston, the fourth largest city in the United States, floodwaters inundated thousands of homes. Entire neighborhoods were left uninhabitable, and more than 400,000 people had to seek shelter, many in temporary shelters set up by the Red Cross and other relief organizations. Despite the overwhelming devastation, Texans showed incredible resilience. Local residents, firefighters, police officers, and volunteers from around the country came together to assist in rescue efforts. The U.S. military and the National Guard deployed personnel to help with search and rescue operations, and the Federal Emergency Management Agency, or FEMA, quickly provided support in the form of food, water, and emergency supplies. The sight of people using boats, canoes, and even airboats to rescue stranded families became a symbol of hope and community solidarity during this dark time. The response was swift, but the recovery process was far from quick. Over 300,000 homes were affected, and many sustained severe damage. More than 1,000 homes were destroyed, and thousands more had major structural damage. Houston alone saw around 32,000 homes damaged, with significant destruction in low-lying areas. The sheer magnitude of the disaster meant that recovery efforts would take years, and many people were forced to rebuild their lives from scratch. The emotional and psychological toll was also significant. For many, the loss of homes, personal belongings, and even loved ones was devastating. The storm claimed the lives of more than 100 people in total, with the majority of those deaths occurring in Texas. In addition to the direct effects of the storm, many people experienced long-term challenges such as displacement, financial hardships, and the trauma of losing everything they had. Despite the overwhelming challenges, the disaster also led to widespread support. Communities and individuals came together, providing donations, volunteering, and offering assistance in any way they could. The generosity and unity that emerged during this difficult time highlighted the strength of the human spirit in the face of tragedy. While the recovery would take years, the response to Hurricane Harvey demonstrated the power of community and resilience in times of crisis. In the wake of Hurricane Harvey, it became clear that the disaster's effects would extend far beyond the immediate recovery efforts. The storm highlighted several key issues related to infrastructure, flood management, and the need for better preparedness in future natural disasters. One of the most significant lessons learned from Harvey was the vulnerability of certain areas, especially in relation to flooding. Houston, which sits on flat land and has a sprawling urban development, found its drainage systems overwhelmed by the unprecedented rainfall. The storm's catastrophic flooding demonstrated that existing flood control measures were inadequate to handle such an extreme event. Many experts called for major changes in how cities like Houston manage stormwater, emphasizing the need for improved infrastructure to better protect communities from future flooding. As a result, local officials began working on the long-term strategies to bolster the city's flood defenses, including expanding reservoirs, upgrading stormwater drainage systems, and focusing on urban planning that accounts for more resilient water management. However, these changes would require significant time, resources, and coordination between local, state, and federal agencies. Another critical lesson was the importance of emergency preparedness and the need for a faster, more efficient response in future disasters. While the response to Harvey was swift, it became evident that certain areas were caught off guard by the storm's intensity and duration. Many people were forced to evacuate without adequate warning, and emergency services were initially overwhelmed by the scale of the disaster. As a result, authorities began re-evaluating emergency evacuation plans, communication systems, and coordination with neighboring regions to ensure that future evacuations and relief efforts could be carried out more effectively. In addition to the physical damage, the economic impact of Hurricane Harvey was staggering. The storm caused an estimated $125 billion in damages, making it the second costliest natural disaster in U.S. history at the time. Thousands of businesses were forced to close, and the oil and gas industry in Texas was significantly disrupted. The loss of income, combined with the cost of rebuilding, created significant financial challenges for both individuals and communities. Despite these setbacks, many businesses began to recover in the months that followed, and the local economy slowly rebounded. The storm also led to an increase in conversations about the need for stronger building codes, especially in areas prone to flooding. The mental and emotional impact of the storm lingered for many survivors. Displacement, the loss of homes, and the overwhelming destruction took a toll on the mental health of thousands. However, the support systems and the strength of local communities helped many individuals cope with the trauma. Mental health services were made available to those affected, and the resilience shown by survivors and volunteers became a testament to the power of human spirit in the face of tragedy. As Texas and the Gulf Coast region continue to recover, Hurricane Harvey's impact serves as a reminder of the unpredictable power of nature and the importance of being prepared. The storm's aftermath has led to improvements in disaster response protocols and a greater focus on climate change and its potential to fuel more extreme weather events. While it remains one of the costliest and most devastating storms in history, the lessons learned from Hurricane Harvey have shaped future disaster response and recovery efforts, helping communities better prepare for the challenges that lie ahead. As the years pass, Texas and the affected regions will continue to rebuild, but the memories of Hurricane Harvey will remain. The storm not only changed the physical landscape, but also altered the way people think about climate change, infrastructure, and resilience in the face of natural disasters. Mount Redoubt, a towering stratovolcano in southern Alaska, stood silent for over 20 years before showing signs of an awakening in late 1989. Nestled within the Aleutian Range, this massive volcano had a history of eruptions, but its long dormancy had lulled many into a sense of security. However, beneath its seemingly tranquil exterior, forces were building that would soon make headlines across the globe. In the months leading up to the eruption, subtle shifts in the volcano's behavior caught the attention of scientists. Small but persistent earthquakes rippled through the ground, a telltale sign of magma movement deep within the earth. The frequency and intensity of these tremors gradually increased, hinting that Mount Redoubt was preparing for something significant. Steam emissions from the summit vents became more frequent, and the surrounding glaciers began to show signs of melting. The United States Geological Survey, USGS, closely monitored these changes, piecing together the clues of the impending eruption. At that time, volcanic monitoring technology was not as advanced as it is today. Instruments like seismometers and tilt meters provided critical data, but they were limited in their ability to predict the exact timing or magnitude of an eruption. This uncertainty left scientists and local residents alike in a state of constant vigilance, waiting for the inevitable. The region around Mount Redoubt, known for its rugged beauty, was home to scattered communities, small towns, and vital infrastructure. The nearby Drift River Terminal, a facility used for storing and shipping crude oil, was a major concern. Its proximity to the volcano made it highly vulnerable to the potential hazards of an eruption, such as ashfall, lahars, and pyroclastic flows. Preparations to mitigate risks were underway, but no one could predict the scale of what was to come. By early December of 1989, the seismic activity had reached a fever pitch. Earthquakes were now occurring in rapid succession, and steam plumes rose ominously from the summit. The USGS issued alerts warning of a likely eruption. Local authorities coordinated emergency plans, and residents prepared for the worst, stocking up on supplies and making evacuation plans. Despite these efforts, the sense of unease lingered. As the days ticked by, tension grew. The world turned its eyes to Alaska, captivated by the dramatic buildup of one of nature's most powerful forces. Scientists worked tirelessly to decipher the signals coming from Mount Redoubt, knowing they were witnessing a prelude to a significant geological event. The stage was set, and the volcano's long slumber was about to end in spectacular fashion. On December 14, 1989, Mount Redoubt ended its years of dormancy with a sudden and dramatic eruption. It began with a powerful explosion that sent a towering column of ash and gas spiraling nearly 10 miles into the atmosphere. This was the first in a series of eruptions that would last for months, each more unpredictable than the last. The initial eruption coated the nearby landscape in a thick layer of volcanic ash, turning daylight into a dim, gray haze. For the people living in the surrounding areas, this marked the start of a challenging and chaotic period. The ash cloud, propelled by strong winds, spread far beyond the volcano, affecting communities hundreds of miles away. Air travel, a lifeline in Alaska's vast and often remote regions, came to a standstill. Anchorage, the state's largest city, saw its airport operations severely disrupted as ash particles posed a serious threat to aircraft engines. Flights were grounded or rerouted, and travelers were left stranded. Pilots navigating the airspace faced the daunting task of avoiding the massive ash plume, which could cause catastrophic engine failure if encountered. The eruption also unleashed another dangerous phenomenon, lahars. These fast-moving torrents of volcanic mud and debris formed as the heat from this eruption melted the glaciers and snow on Mount Redout's summit. The lahars surged down the mountain's flanks, carving paths of destruction through valleys and waterways. One of the most notable impacts was at the Drift River terminal, where crude oil tanks were directly in the path of these devastating flows. Emergency crews worked around the clock to protect the facility, building berms and pumping out oil to prevent a potential environmental disaster. For weeks, Mount Redoubt continued to erupt intermittently, with each event bringing new challenges. Volcanologists documented pyroclastic flows, searing avalanches of hot gas and rock that raced down the mountain at incredible speeds, obliterating everything in their path. These flows not only reshaped the terrain, but also created significant hazards for those attempting to study or manage the eruption's effects. The ongoing eruption forced many residents to evacuate their homes, leaving behind their belongings and livelihoods. Schools and businesses closed, and communities struggled to adapt to the new reality of living under the shadow of an active volcano. Emergency shelters were set up, and local governments coordinated efforts to distribute clean water and medical supplies to those in need. The ashfall contaminated water supplies, clogged machinery, and created respiratory issues, particularly for children, the elderly, and those with pre-existing health conditions. Scientists working on the ground faced immense challenges as well. The conditions were harsh, with ashfall reducing visibility to mere feet and coating their equipment in fine abrasive dust. Despite these difficulties, their efforts to monitor and study Mount Redoubt provided critical information that helped guide emergency responses and protect lives. As the eruptions continued into early 1990, it became clear that this was no ordinary volcanic event. The sheer scale and intensity of Mount Redoubt's activity captured the world's attention, highlighting both the destructive power of nature and the resilience of the communities affected. As Mount Redoubt's eruptions intensified in early 1990, the volcano unleashed some of its most powerful and dramatic displays. The ash plumes grew larger, frequently reaching altitudes of over 40,000 feet, and disrupted air travel, not just within Alaska, but across significant portions of North America. The fine volcanic ash particles carried by the wind spread as far as parts of the lower 48 states and Canada, creating a widespread environmental and logistical challenge. One of the most significant hazards during this period was the impact on aviation. Volcanic ash is notorious for its ability to cause severe damage to aircraft engines, potentially leading to in-flight engine failure. A particularly harrowing incident occurred in December 1989 when a KLM Royal Dutch Airlines flight encountered the ash cloud. The Boeing 747's engines all failed mid-flight, leaving the massive jetliner in a dangerous glide. Miraculously, after multiple attempts, the pilots managed to restart the engines, narrowly avoiding disaster. This close call underscored the critical need for real-time volcanic monitoring and prompted aviation authorities to establish better protocols for volcanic ash avoidance. Back on the ground, the lahars continued to wreak havoc. As the eruptions melted the extensive glacial ice atop Mount Redoubt, these destructive mudflows grew in size and frequency, cutting through valleys and river systems. They repeatedly threatened infrastructure like the Drift River oil terminal, where protective measures were constantly tested. Engineers and emergency crews worked tirelessly to reinforce barriers and divert flows, preventing catastrophic damage to the facility and potential oil spills into nearby ecosystems. The Drift River evacuation and safeguarding efforts became a symbol of the complex interplay between human activity and natural disasters in Alaska's rugged environment. The surrounding communities faced ongoing hardships as the eruptions dragged on. Ashfall remained a persistent problem, blanketing towns and causing widespread damage to machinery, vehicles, and buildings. The abrasive ash clogged air filters, corroded surfaces, and created long-term maintenance challenges for equipment critical to daily life in Alaska's remote regions. Residents had to wear masks and goggles to protect themselves from the health risks posed by the fine particles, which could irritate the lungs and eyes. Roads became treacherous as the ash mixed with snow and ice, creating slippery and unpredictable surfaces. In addition to the physical dangers, the eruptions brought significant psychological and economic stress. Families were displaced from their homes for extended periods, businesses suffered losses, and the cost of disaster response and recovery mounted. For many, the constant uncertainty of when the eruptions might cease added to the emotional toll. Local officials worked alongside federal agencies to coordinate relief efforts, ensuring that food, water, and medical supplies reached those most in need. Community resilience was put to the test as people banded together to support one another through the crisis. Meanwhile, scientists continued their meticulous monitoring of Mount Redout's activity. Advances in technology allowed volcanologists to gather data in ways that had never been possible during previous eruptions. Instruments measured everything from seismic activity and gas emissions to the rate at which glaciers were melting. The findings not only helped to inform immediate response strategies, but also contributed to the broader understanding of how stratovolcanoes like Mount Redoubt behave. This eruption became a landmark case study in volcanology, with lessons that would inform future monitoring and preparedness efforts around the world. As Mount Redoubt continued to erupt well into the spring of 1990, it became increasingly clear that this event was reshaping both the physical landscape and the lives of those who called the region home. The combination of natural destruction and human determination would leave a lasting legacy in Alaska's history. As the eruptions of Mount Redoubt gradually waned in the summer of 1990, the immediate crisis transitioned into a period of recovery and reflection. The region, once blanketed in layers of ash and scarred by the powerful lahars, began the slow process of healing. For the people who lived through this event, the eruption left not just physical marks on the landscape, but also lasting impacts on their communities, industries, and scientific understanding of volcanoes. In the aftermath, cleanup efforts became a monumental task. Entire towns had to deal with the thick layers of ash that coated homes, streets, and public spaces. Removing the ash required careful coordination as it posed significant risks to both machinery and human health. Crews used heavy equipment to scrape it away while individuals worked tirelessly to restore their properties. Water systems clogged with ash needed extensive repairs, and local governments faced the challenge of funding these efforts while ensuring the safety and well-being of their residents. The long-term environmental effects of the eruption were equally profound. The ash deposits enriched the soil in some areas, boosting plant growth in the years that followed, but they also caused significant disruption to local ecosystems. Rivers and streams choked with volcanic material, altered their courses, and disrupted fish habitats, impacting the vital salmon populations that so many Alaskans relied on for food and income. Wildlife, too, was forced to adapt to the dramatically changed landscape, and some species faced increased challenges in the immediate years after the eruption. Economically, the eruption's consequences were wide-reaching. The aviation and oil industries, both crucial to Alaska's economy, bore the brunt of the disaster. The grounding of flights during the peak of the eruptions caused financial losses for airlines and disrupted travel for thousands of passengers. The Drift River oil terminal, though saved from catastrophic destruction, required extensive repairs and operational adjustments. For many businesses in affected areas, the cost of recovery proved a significant burden. Despite the challenges, the eruption also brought important advancements in volcanic science and disaster preparedness. The data collected during Mount Redoubt's eruption became a cornerstone for understanding how volcanoes interact with glaciers, how ash plumes affect aviation, and how lahars behave in rugged terrains. This information informed future disaster response strategies, not just in Alaska, but globally, as scientists and emergency planners applied these lessons to other volcanic regions. The eruption of Mount Redoubt also highlighted the resilience of Alaskan communities. Faced with one of the most significant volcanic events of the 20th century, people came together to rebuild and support one another. From Anchorage to the small towns near the volcano's base, stories of neighborly assistance and determination emerge as reminders of the human spirit's ability to endure even the most daunting challenges. By the end of 1990, Mount Redoubt had largely quieted, leaving behind a transformed landscape and a wealth of scientific knowledge. While the volcano remains active and continues to be monitored to this day, the events of 1989 and 1990 stand as a testament to the incredible power of nature and the resilience of those who face its wrath. The legacy of Mount Redout's eruption lives on, not just in the memories of those who experienced it, but in the advancements it spurred in science, safety, and preparedness. It remains a potent reminder of the unpredictable and awe-inspiring forces that shape our planet, challenging us to learn, adapt, and respect the natural world. In the heart of Montana, near the edges of Yellowstone National Park, the Madison River winds through towering pines and rugged canyons. It was a place where families came to camp, fish, and escape the heat of summer. On the night of August 17, 1959, hundreds of people were asleep in tents and trailers along Hebgen Lake and the Madison River, unaware they were directly above one of the most active fault zones in North America. At exactly 11:37 p.m., the earth unleashed a violent tremor that would change the landscape forever. The ground didn't just shake, it tore apart, sending massive rock and soil sliding down the canyon walls. An entire mountainside weighing over 60 million tons was about to crash into the Madison River, creating a new lake in the process. Campers and residents would experience sheer terror as the earth split beneath them, while those lucky enough to be on higher ground watched in disbelief as chaos erupted. This is the story of Montana's Hebgen Lake earthquake, a natural disaster that reshaped the land and left a lasting mark on everyone who witnessed it. August 1959 was peak tourist season in southwestern Montana, and the area around Hebgen Lake was alive with activity. Campers set up along the shore and in the Rock Creek public campground, filling the air with laughter, campfires, and the smell of pine and grilled meals. Families came from across the country to fish the Madison River, hike the surrounding hills, and sleep under the vast Montana sky. Hebgen Lake itself was held back by an earth-filled dam completed in 1914, which had kept the lake stable for decades. The river carved deep canyons that were both beautiful and precarious, with cliffs rising sharply from the water's edge. As evening fell on August 17th, the campers zipped their sleeping bags and settled into trailers, completely unaware of the immense pressure building along the intermountain seismic belt beneath them. The fault lines in the region had been gradually accumulating stress for years, and that night the rock was ready to break. For a few fleeting hours, everything seemed normal, the calm beam before a disaster that would strike in a matter of seconds. At exactly 11:37 p.m. on August 17, 1959, the ground beneath Hebgen Lake ruptured with unimaginable force. The quake registered between 7.2 and 7.3 in magnitude, making it the strongest ever recorded in Montana. For roughly 30 to 40 seconds, the earth bucked, rolled, and twisted, throwing campers and trailers alike into chaos. Sections of U.S. Highway 287 fractured and slid into the lake, cutting off the main route along the Madison River. Fault scarps appeared throughout the area, with the ground dropping as much as 20 feet in some places, creating sudden cliffs where flat ground had existed moments before. The lake itself became unstable, and massive waves, known as a seiche, roared across its surface, some reaching 20 feet in height and surging repeatedly over the Hebgen Dam. Witnesses reported a deafening roar, louder than thunder, as the land shifted violently under their feet. The event reshaped the landscape in an instant, leaving an eerie aftermath that foreshadowed the coming devastation and set the stage for the collapse of an entire mountainside. As the ground continued to shake, the south face of Sheep Mountain, looming over Madison Canyon, suddenly gave way. Over 60 million tons of rock, dirt, and trees broke free and surged down the slope at speeds estimated near 100 miles per hour. The massive landslide completely buried the Madison River and created a temporary dam more than 200 feet high and nearly 3/4 of a mile wide. Debris struck the opposite canyon wall with such force that it propelled trees and boulders hundreds of feet upward. The blast of air generated by the slide was hurricane force, tossing vehicles, trailers, and camping equipment like toys. In its path lay the Rock Creek campground, where dozens of tents and trailers were obliterated, leaving only a small number of survivors. On the edges, the slide forced water out of the river channel, sending a wall of muddy, churning water across the canyon. Within minutes, a peaceful summer night had been transformed into a scene of total devastation, and anyone in the valley had no choice but to face the sudden and violent wrath of nature. In the immediate aftermath of the landslide, campers and families were trapped in total darkness, surrounded by dust, falling debris, and the roar of aftershocks. Many survivors relied purely on luck and quick thinking to escape. Grover and Lillian Malt, a couple in their 70s, clung to a tree as their trailer was swept into the Madison River, holding on for hours in freezing water until morning rescue. Irene Bennett Dunn found herself pinned under a fallen tree, her leg broken, with only her son Phil able to respond to her calls. They were the sole survivors from their family. Other families scrambled to find high ground as waters surged over the riverbanks, while the deafening noise of shifting rock and cascading water drowned out any calls for help. Among the heroes of the night was Nurse Tootie Green, who immediately began treating the injured with what little supplies she had, improvising bandages from towels and clothing in the dark. For many, survival came down to staying calm, assessing the hazards, and helping one another navigate through the chaos. The hours were long, the danger unrelenting, and the landscape forever altered as the quake and slide left its mark on every canyon wall and shoreline. By the morning of August 18th, the full scale of the disaster became clear. The Madison River Canyon was completely isolated, blocked by the massive landslide, and the main highway was destroyed, leaving survivors stranded with no easy escape. Early reports came through a local ham radio operator in West Yellowstone, alerting authorities to the dire situation. Rescue operations began immediately, with the U.S. Forest Service deploying smoke jumpers to parachute into the hazardous area and provide first aid. Helicopter pilots from Hill Air Force Base played a crucial role, landing on unstable ground to evacuate the injured. One pilot, Ray Gerlach, personally rescued 21 people. Bulldozer crews worked around the clock to create a makeshift road to allow additional survivors to reach safety. Officials also realized the landslide had created a natural dam, and water pooling behind it threatened catastrophic flooding downstream, prompting the evacuation of the town of Ennis. These coordinated efforts over the following days were critical in preventing further loss of life and stabilizing the area, setting the stage for engineers to later create a controlled spillway and form what would become Quake Lake. The 1959 Hebgen Lake earthquake left a lasting mark on Montana, claiming 28 lives and causing $11 million in damages, the equivalent of over $119 million today. 19 of the victims were lost in the landslide, and their bodies were never recovered. Scientists flocked to the area to study the dramatic fault scarps and massive landslide, gaining a unique opportunity to better understand seismic hazards in the Rocky Mountains. Yellowstone National Park, just next door, also experienced dramatic changes. Dozens of hot springs and geysers became active, some erupting for the first time in recorded history, including Sapphire Pool, which began shooting water more than 150 feet into the air. The natural dam formed by the landslide forced engineers to act quickly, carving a controlled spillway and stabilizing the water level to prevent catastrophic downstream flooding. Quake Lake remains today as both a serene and haunting reminder of that night, with ghostly tree trunks still standing in the water as a testament to the violence of the landslide. The U.S. Forest Service manages the Madison River Canyon earthquake area, and a visitor center on top of the landslide offers panoramic views, while a large boulder with a plaque commemorates those who lost their lives. This disaster, marked by both human tragedy and scientific discovery, continues to teach lessons about the unpredictable power of nature and the resilience of those who survived. Tornadoes have been making headlines in 2025, with an alarming trend of increased frequency and intensity. Understanding why so many tornadoes have occurred this year requires a look into the atmospheric conditions that foster their development. Tornadoes form when specific weather elements align. Warm, moist air near the ground meets cooler, dry air above, creating instability. When this instability combines with wind patterns that change direction and speed with height, a phenomenon known as wind shear, it sets the stage for rotating thunderstorms called supercells. Within these supercells, under the right conditions, tornadoes can develop. In 2025, the United States has experienced an unusually warm and wet spring. The Old Farmer's Almanac predicted above-average temperatures and increased rainfall for much of the country, particularly in the Deep South. These conditions contribute to the atmospheric instability necessary for severe thunderstorms and consequently tornadoes. Moreover, the Gulf of Mexico has been supplying abundant moisture to the central and southern regions of the U.S., enhancing the development of thunderstorms. The combination of warm, moist air from the Gulf and cooler air masses moving in from the north creates the perfect environment for tornado formation. Understanding these factors helps explain the surge in tornado activity this year. However, the specific outbreaks and their impacts provide a clearer picture of the situation. In the next part, we'll delve into the major tornado outbreaks of 2025, examining their size, damage, and the communities affected. In the early months of 2025, the United States has experienced a series of devastating tornado outbreaks, each leaving a significant mark on the communities they struck. These events have underscored the volatile nature of this year's weather patterns and the profound impact on affected regions. On March 14th, a powerful storm system initiated a multi-day tornado outbreak across the central United States. The town of Franklin, Arkansas bore the brunt of an EF4 tornado, characterized by winds exceeding 166 miles per hour. This violent twister caused extensive destruction to homes and infrastructure, leading to multiple fatalities. The same day, Diaz, Arkansas experienced a similar EF4 tornado, compounding the devastation in the region. These tornadoes were part of a larger system that produced numerous significant tornadoes across several states. In the aftermath of the mid-March outbreak, communities like Cave City, Arkansas began the arduous process of recovery. An EF3 tornado had torn through the town with winds reaching 165 miles per hour, causing substantial damage. By March 31st, progress was evident as residents and volunteers worked tirelessly to clear debris and rebuild. The resilience displayed by these communities highlighted their determination to recover and prepare for future severe weather events. As April commenced, another formidable storm system swept through the southern and midwestern United States. On April 2nd, Owasso, Oklahoma, was struck by a tornado around 6:40 a.m., resulting in significant roof damage to homes, downed power lines, and uprooted trees. Fortunately, no injuries were reported, but the structural damage was considerable. Later that day, a large multiple vortex wedge tornado with wind speeds nearing 200 miles per hour carved a path of destruction near Lake City, Arkansas. This tornado prompted a rare tornado emergency, the highest level of alert as it approached densely populated areas. Approximately 40,000 residents were left without power, and at least 24 homes in Monette and Lake City sustained significant damage. 7 individuals were injured, underscoring the tornado's severity. The same storm system continued its destructive path into Missouri and Tennessee. In Missouri, the towns of Advance and Delta faced significant damage, with reports of destroyed homes and infrastructure. In Tennessee, Selmer was directly hit by a significant tornado in the early hours of April 3rd, leading to widespread destruction and prompting emergency response efforts. These events resulted in multiple fatalities and injuries across the affected states. The cumulative effect of these tornadoes has been profound. Beyond the tragic loss of life, thousands of homes have been damaged or destroyed, and critical infrastructure has been compromised. Power outages affected hundreds of thousands, and emergency services were stretched thin responding to the widespread devastation. In response, state and federal agencies mobilized resources to assist in recovery and provide aid to displaced residents. The Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, coordinated with local authorities to facilitate relief efforts, emphasizing the importance of preparedness and resilience in the face of such natural disasters. These consecutive tornado outbreaks in 2025 have highlighted the increasing volatility of weather patterns and the critical need for enhanced forecasting, early warning systems, and community preparedness to mitigate the impact of such devastating events. The series of destructive tornado outbreaks this year has raised questions about why so many have occurred in such a short time. Scientists and meteorologists have closely analyzed the atmospheric conditions leading to these storms, looking at how shifts in weather patterns have contributed to the severe outbreaks. One of the biggest factors influencing the high number of tornadoes this year has been the unusually strong jet stream activity. The jet stream, a fast-moving ribbon of air high in the atmosphere, plays a key role in storm formation. This year, this current has been positioned in a way that has repeatedly allowed warm, moist air from the Gulf of Mexico to collide with cold, dry air from the north. This interaction has created ideal conditions for powerful thunderstorms, which are the foundation for tornado formation. Additionally, scientists have observed a persistent La Niña pattern in the Pacific Ocean, which has influenced weather conditions across North America. La Niña typically leads to cooler ocean temperatures in the central and eastern Pacific, affecting atmospheric circulation patterns. This can enhance storm activity in the central United States by increasing instability in the atmosphere. In past years, with strong La Niña phases, tornado seasons have been more active than average, and 2025 has followed that pattern. Another significant factor is the unusually warm Gulf of Mexico waters. The sea surface temperatures in early 2025 have been among the highest recorded for this time of year. Warm ocean water leads to increased evaporation, sending more moisture into the atmosphere. When this warm, humid air moves northward and interacts with frontal boundaries and low-pressure systems, it fuels severe thunderstorms. These conditions have contributed to the repeated outbreaks of tornadoes across multiple states. For a tornado to develop, there must be a combination of wind shear and instability. Wind shear refers to changes in wind speed and direction at different levels of the atmosphere. In 2025, wind shear has been particularly strong in tornado-prone regions, meaning that thunderstorms have had the right conditions to rotate and become supercells, the type of storm most likely to produce tornadoes. Atmospheric instability is another essential ingredient. Instability occurs when warm air near the surface rises quickly into cooler air above, causing strong updrafts. This year, the atmosphere has been highly unstable due to strong temperature contrast between air masses. In some of the most damaging tornadoes, the instability was extreme, with temperature differences exceeding 30 degrees between the surface and the upper atmosphere. Traditionally, the central United States, including states like Kansas, Oklahoma, and Nebraska, has been known as Tornado Alley because of its frequent tornado activity. However, recent years have shown an eastward shift, with more tornadoes occurring in states like Mississippi, Alabama, and Tennessee. This trend has continued in 2025, with some of the worst tornadoes occurring in the southeastern states. This shift is partly due to changes in climate patterns and the increasing presence of warm, moist air further east. The Central Plains still experience tornadoes, but the frequency of severe storms in the Mississippi Valley and Deep South has increased. The combination of warm Gulf moisture, strong wind shear, and an active jet stream has made these regions especially vulnerable. Although it is still early in the year, 2025 is already on track to be one of the most active tornado seasons in recent history. Compared to previous years, the number of tornadoes recorded so far is significantly higher than average. Meteorologists have compared the start of this year to other highly active years, such as 2011, when a record number of tornadoes occurred across the United States, including the catastrophic outbreak in late April of that year. Some similarities exist, including the presence of a strong La Niña pattern and an active jet stream. However, 2025 has also introduced new factors, such as the exceptionally warm Gulf of Mexico, which has intensified storms even further. As the peak tornado season continues, forecasters are closely watching whether these conditions will persist. If the jet stream remains in a favorable position and the Gulf continues to supply warm, moist air, the heightened tornado activity could continue into late spring and early summer. Scientists are also studying how climate trends may be influencing tornado behavior. While no direct link has been proven between climate change and increased tornadoes, some evidence suggests that a warming climate can contribute to more extreme weather conditions. This includes stronger thunderstorms, more intense rainfall, and possibly changes in tornado frequency and distribution. With multiple severe outbreaks already recorded in 2025, experts are urging communities in tornado-prone regions to stay prepared. Advances in forecasting and early warning systems have helped save lives, but the unpredictability of tornadoes remains a major challenge. Understanding why this year has been so active is a crucial step in improving future preparedness and response efforts. The record-breaking tornado outbreaks of spring 2025 have left lasting effects on the communities they struck. From destroyed homes and businesses to loss of life, the impact has been devastating. As meteorologists continue to analyze this year's severe weather patterns, emergency responders and government agencies are working to improve preparedness and recovery efforts. The destruction caused by the tornadoes of 2025 has been severe, with entire neighborhoods flattened and thousands of residents displaced. Some towns have suffered multiple tornado strikes in a short period, making recovery even more difficult. The cost of rebuilding is expected to be in the billions, with federal and state emergency funds being allocated to assist those affected. Insurance claims have skyrocketed, and many families face long-term financial hardships due to property losses. In addition to physical damage, the emotional toll on survivors has been significant. Many people who lived through these tornadoes have described the fear and trauma of losing everything in a matter of seconds. Disaster relief organizations have reported a sharp increase in mental health support requests from affected communities, highlighting the need for ongoing psychological assistance in the aftermath of such devastating storms. One key area of focus following this year's deadly tornadoes has been improving early warning systems and emergency response strategies. Although tornado warnings have become more accurate in recent years, some storms this year formed and intensified so rapidly that people had little time to react. This has prompted discussions on how to enhance radar technology and warning communication methods. Mobile alerts and sirens remain critical tools in notifying people of approaching tornadoes. However, in some cases this year, sirens failed due to power outages or technical issues, leading to tragic consequences. Emergency officials are now pushing for increased funding to modernize alert systems and ensure they remain operational during severe weather. Another major focus has been improving public awareness of tornado safety measures. Some tornadoes in 2025 struck areas that do not typically experience such strong storms, catching many residents unprepared. In response, meteorologists and emergency management agencies are working on new public education campaigns to teach people how to take immediate action when a tornado warning is issued. The unprecedented number of tornadoes this year has also renewed discussions on how to make buildings and infrastructure more resistant to storm damage. Some of the most destructive tornadoes of this year have leveled entire towns, leaving only the strongest structures standing. Engineers and city planners are now exploring ways to reinforce homes, schools, and public buildings to better withstand future storms. One proposed solution is implementing stronger building codes in tornado-prone areas. This could include requiring homes to have reinforced safe rooms, impact-resistant windows, and stronger roof anchoring systems. In areas that were repeatedly hit by tornadoes this year, officials are considering whether new zoning regulations should be introduced to limit construction in high-risk zones. Underground storm shelters have also gained renewed attention. While they are common in some parts of the United States, many communities lack access to them. Some states are now considering incentives for homeowners to install storm shelters, as well as funding for public shelters that can accommodate larger populations. Scientists continue to study whether long-term climate trends are playing a role in the increasing tornado activity seen this year. While tornadoes have always been a part of North America's weather patterns, this year's outbreaks have raised concerns about potential shifts in where and when they occur. One emerging area of research focuses on the warming climate's impact on atmospheric instability. Some studies suggest that rising global temperatures could lead to more frequent and intense thunderstorms, which could in turn produce more tornadoes. However, other factors such as wind shear and jet stream patterns also play a role, making it difficult to predict exactly how tornado activity may change in the coming years. Meteorologists are also working on improving long-range forecasting methods to better predict when conditions will be favorable for severe weather outbreaks. Advances in computer modeling have allowed scientists to identify atmospheric patterns that may indicate an increased risk of tornadoes weeks in advance. If these methods continue to improve, they could help communities better prepare for severe tornado seasons in the future. The tornado outbreaks of 2025 have been some of the most intense and widespread in recent history. From the deadly storms in March to the ongoing destruction in April, this year has demonstrated the devastating power of nature. As recovery efforts continue, there is a strong focus on improving tornado preparedness, strengthening building codes, and advancing weather forecasting technology. For those living in tornado-prone areas, staying informed and prepared remains the best defense against these violent storms. Scientists, emergency responders, and government officials are all working together to understand why this year has been so active and to find ways to reduce the damage caused by future tornadoes. While no one can stop tornadoes from forming, the lessons learned from this year will play a crucial role in helping communities better withstand and recover from future outbreaks. August 20th, 1910 didn't appear out of nowhere. The stage for one of the worst fires in American history had been set months before. The winter of 1909 had been unusually mild, melting snow early and leaving the northern Rockies, stretching across Idaho, Montana, and Washington, unusually dry. By spring, rivers that normally swelled with snowmelt were reduced to trickles, and by June, the forests were tinder dry. Lightning from dry thunderstorms ignited hundreds of small fires, while sparks from trains, campfires, and logging operations added countless more. The United States Forest Service, created just 5 years earlier in 1905, was still a fledgling organization. Underfunded, understaffed, and largely inexperienced in handling fires of this scale, the agency scrambled to respond. Recruitment posters called for men who could ride for days, fight fires, and survive in the wilderness without losing their heads, a job for the toughest of men. By mid-August, estimates suggest between 1,000 and 3,000 separate fires were smoldering across the region, creating a patchwork of danger too vast for any single team to contain. Smoke thickened the air, the sun glowed dim and red through the haze, and the mountains seemed to hold their breath, waiting for disaster to strike. President William Howard Taft even sent 4,000 soldiers to help combat the flames, but it was like trying to put out an ocean with a bucket. The summer of 1910 was a perfect storm of human activity, extreme dryness, and natural lightning strikes. The forests of the northern Rockies were primed, waiting for the spark that would ignite one of the deadliest wildfires in United States history. Saturday, August 20th, 1910 brought the disaster that everyone had feared but could not stop. A powerful cold front swept into the northern Rockies, but instead of rain, it brought hurricane-force winds with gusts over 70 miles per hour. These winds turned the thousands of small fires into a single, unstoppable inferno, later known as the Big Blow-Up. Flames flattened and raced across the forest floor, while massive trees were uprooted and tossed like matchsticks. The fire created its own weather, sending superheated air spiraling and launching embers miles ahead, igniting new fires that trapped entire crews in seconds. The roar of the firestorm was described by survivors as a sound like 1,000 freight trains, drowning out all thought. Firefighters were caught in a desperate race for survival, with the flames moving faster than a galloping horse. One of the deadliest moments occurred at Setzer Creek, where 28 men in a firefighting crew were overrun and killed in the chaos. Passenger trains scrambled to evacuate towns in the path of the fire. One train carrying 1,000 residents of Avery, Idaho, raced over a bridge surrounded by flames, barely reaching safety through a nearby tunnel. Amid the chaos, Forest Ranger Ed Pulaski became a symbol of courage. Leading 44 men who were trapped in the inferno, he guided them to an old mine shaft. As the fire raged over the entrance, Pulaski used his revolver and quick thinking to maintain order, ensuring that 40 of the 45 men survived. His actions demonstrated extraordinary bravery in a firestorm that moved faster than any human could run, saving lives that would otherwise have been lost in the blaze. After 2 days of relentless destruction, rain finally arrived on August 23, 1910, bringing the inferno to an end. The devastation was staggering. At least 87 people had perished, 78 of them firefighters, and over 3 million acres of forest were incinerated, an area larger than the state of Connecticut. Entire towns had been wiped from the map, and the economic loss, adjusted for today's value, would exceed $1 billion. The smoke traveled thousands of kilometers, darkening skies as far away as New England and leaving soot on ice in Greenland. The fire's impact went far beyond immediate destruction. It transformed the United States Forest Service, proving the necessity of a professional and well-funded firefighting organization. Public attention turned to the heroism of men like Ed Pulaski, and Congress responded by doubling the Forest Service budget. A century-long policy of aggressive fire suppression began, creating a network of lookout towers, access roads, and elite firefighting teams, including the introduction of smoke jumpers in later decades. Yet this policy had unintended consequences. By suppressing natural low-intensity fires for decades, forests became unnaturally dense, allowing dead wood and underbrush to accumulate. This fuel buildup made future fires even more destructive, setting the stage for modern megafires. Smokey Bear, created in 1944, embodied the philosophy of total fire prevention, spreading a message that shaped American attitudes toward forest management for generations. The Great Fire of 1910 was more than a disaster, it was a turning point. It highlighted the raw power of nature and the limits of human control. while forcing a nation to rethink its approach to forest safety, preparedness, and firefighting. The Great Fire of 1910 was a crucible that reshaped both the landscape and the nation's approach to wildfire. In its aftermath, survivors, officials, and communities faced years of rebuilding. Entire towns had been destroyed, and the northern Rockies forests were left scarred and vulnerable. Recovery was slow, with displaced families forced to find new livelihoods, while the U.S. Forest Service struggled to restore the burned areas and prevent soil erosion. The fire also cemented Ed Pulaski's legacy. His leadership during the Inferno became a symbol of courage under impossible circumstances, and his invention of the Pulaski tool, a combination of an axe and a hoe, revolutionized firefighting. Pulaski's story inspired generations of firefighters to prepare for disasters with discipline, strategy, and respect for nature's power. The lessons learned from the fire guided future forest management for decades. Policies were implemented to monitor fire-prone areas, train specialized crews, and invest in early warning systems. However, the fire also illustrated the unintended consequences of aggressive suppression, showing how overmanaged forests could store massive amounts of fuel and become tinderboxes for future megafires. Even today, the events of August 20th to 23rd, 1910 echo through the American West. The Great Fire serves as a stark reminder of nature's unpredictability, the limits of human control, and the need to balance prevention with ecological understanding. It stands as one of the deadliest and most transformative wildfires in history, leaving a legacy of heroism, tragedy, and crucial lessons for modern firefighting and forest management.